Oh, Wendy. Is she next? Now here she comes just sauntering in that courtroom. She's not gonna look at Georgia. She's carrying a bottle of water. Go on, girl, get on that stage. Donna's over there. She's like, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Is that your daughter? That's my daughter. That's my Wendy. Oh, Wendy, over here at the defendant table. Wendy, it's been so long since I've seen you. You look healthy. You look like you've been enjoying yourself. Oh, Wendy, what does freedom taste like? You see this smile? It's what I imagine I would do if I was free. But Harvey, look, it's a little family reunion. You little powder puff, so happy. Yeah, let me just sit down. Harvey, that's my daughter. Doesn't she look healthy? She was always cleaning up late. Wendy's over there like, I'm just going to stare at this paper clip. I'm going to stare, not looking at mother, not looking at mother, not guilty, not guilty.
Fight on direct that anybody in your family that had anything to do with it should be held responsible. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
And that includes you, doesn't it?
Anyone who's responsible. I had always been a real people pleaser, and so there was an aspect of not always being true to myself and wanting to make other people happy.
And one of those people is your mom, right?
Yes. I don't actually remember stipulating. I mean, I see it in the order, but I don't remember actively saying anything or participating in a stipulation. It's not something that comes up in my daily practice, and so at the time I had forgotten that it meant that it was a final order.
You were asked questions about, your mom never suggested any harm to Dan Markell to you, but she did want to bribe him, yes?
Yes.
Take control from him, weren't those her words?
Yes.
Aggravate him.
Yes.
Scare him.
I don't remember scare him, but I believe that was part of it.
Give him some grief.
Yes.
Take something from him.
Yes.
Show that what would make him absolutely miserable.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Miss Wendy has put on a show on the stand for, well, we're getting ready to say decades, but years at this point. The big question now is she next? What's gonna happen? Jurors are speaking. Surviving the Survivors interviewed their divorce lawyer. We'll get to that. So much stuff is coming out. So let's go ahead and do an overview of who these Adlesons are before we get into the possibility of Wendy being behind bars herself. So recently we watched the trial of Donna Adelson. Now this was Wendy's mother. Donna was convicted in September of 2025 of first-degree murder and related other counts. Wendy testified at her trial as she did her brother's trial. Now there were several revelations. She admitted to insulting Dan, that's the victim, verbally, but she also made sure to let them know that she was not involved in any kind of a murder plot. Now Donna's trial brought light to all the messaging, emails, wiretaps, financial transfers, you name it, okay? And it showed the coordination amongst those who were convicted. However, concrete proof tying Wendy to those communications beyond what's already known really hasn't been publicly established, at least in what I have found so far. But there's definitely some things of interest. Now, as of the recording of this, which is September 2025, there's been no charges against Wendy. She's not been charged, and clearly she hasn't gone to any kind of a trial for this stuff. Now, there is motive, and that's one of the big things we're going to talk about today when we review an interview that Surviving the Survivor did with Dan's divorce attorney. Keep in mind, Dan was Wendy's husband. He is the victim. He was killed. He is no longer here. Not only was he her husband, he was the father of their 2 children, which is what the state says is at the center of this case. This was essentially a very bitter divorce and a very, very complicated custody battle. But there's another level of motivation we're going to get into. So go ahead and buckle up and get ready for the Wendy train in today's video.
Hey, 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 welcome to the Sofa Squad. Sipping from the cup at hey.
Now hold on everybody, let's do a quick sofa sidebar now. Keep in mind, ain't no cop, ain't no doctor, ain't no lawyer, ain't no therapist, ain't none of that fancy credentialed stuff, okay? Only credentials we got up in here is my sass, and this sofa. Now keep in mind also, I'm just giving my opinions on very public information, so do your own research, come to your own opinions, and drop them off in the comment section. And while you're down there, if you do like what you see here at the Sofa Squad, drop a little like, drop a little comment, drop a little share. It helps the channel out immensely. Now let's get edition. Hello Sofa Squad, and welcome back to the sofa. We got a sofa. We got a Paul. My name's Paul if you're new to the channel. If you're not new to the channel, my name's Paul. Okay. All right, Sofa Squad, how is everybody doing? So y'all, we are in the new place, but I don't have all my new stuff here yet. So we're getting the old stuff, right? We got little Rosco here. We got the regular sofa, but new things are on the way. Okay. So today, like I said, we're going to be talking about this Wendy case. Now, I want to give a shout out to Surviving the Survivor. So many of you probably already know who they are, but if you don't, go check their channel out. They get amazing interviews, and he's been gracious enough to let me use some clips from his interview with Dan's divorce attorney, which to me is a game changer with this case, right? So what I'm going to do is I've pulled several clips that I want to review, some juror stuff, some of the Wendy's podcast that she did. Bless her heart. So let's just go ahead and get into them. We're going to use those as talking points. Now, first, let's hear from the jury foreman. Okay, she had a lot to say.
Long story short, but also probably long at the same time. Yes. Yes, I do. And do I think she is next? Do I think Harvey might be next? Absolutely, I do. Now, the state hasn't said that specifically, but there's evidence showing that they were aware of what happened.
Okay, so the comment that she's responding to, this is on TikTok, was, do you think Wendy's next or whatever? She's saying, yes, I do. This is the jury foreman. So very interesting. Now, here's the thing. And remember, this is complete speculation at this point, especially for me. I'm not a lawyer or anything, so this is just my 2 cents on it. Now, there's definitely people who work in the law world that hang out in the live chats and stuff like that, and they're like, nope, it's not going to happen. She would have been arrested a while ago if they had the evidence, okay? Now, there's other lawyers that will make videos saying, oh, you know, when it surprised me, this, that, the other. So I don't know personally. I could go either way. Do I personally think that Wendy, first of all, physically had a hand in this, meaning she was there with a gun? Well, absolutely not. We know how that went down at this point, right? Do I think that she knew what was happening? Yes. Do I think that she knew to the degree that Donna and Charlie knew? No. I think it was more of a wink, wink, be sure to not be at your house at this time. Okay, mom. But I think she 100% knew what was taking place, but I also think she had other motivations, okay? So interesting though that a jury person who heard this case, because a lot of us watched this and we're like, how is Wendy not arrested? How is Harvey not arrested, right? It just seems like they knew so much.
No, no. I stayed neutral through the end of the trial, just like we're supposed to. You know, everyone's presumed innocent until proven guilty. You know, I kept my mind open and I took notes on everything, you know, from when both the prosecutor and the defense were arguing their points. I took notes on everything. A lot of people seemed really focused on my age, which is very strange to me. We had a super balanced jury, like a big age range. I was not the youngest one on the jury. And once again, if we're looking at the jury requirements in the state of Florida, you only have to be 18 at minimum. So, I mean, like, if you don't like that rule, whatever.
Now, interesting to hear the foreman talk about, you know, people were worried about her age and she stayed neutral and this, that, and the other. And listening to the various juror members that have gone on and done interviews, they all seem very, and I've seen like, what, 3 so far? Very much like, very fair is what I'm trying to get at, okay? And this is how they should be. You know, regardless of our feelings towards Donna and all these people, they deserve a fair trial just like everybody else does, right? So I was glad to hear the jurors had this perspective. Now what I want to do is this. So we've looked at a little bit of Wendy, you know, we've heard from the jurors, yep, you know, wouldn't surprise me if she's next. We saw the information, we saw the evidence, you know, it's not looking good. Wendy at one point did a podcast basically, and we're going to listen to the court TV correspondent explain it a little bit. And then we're going to listen to some clips from that, because when I heard these, my mouth was on the ground, number one, just simply from the standpoint of her, and I don't know what the proper word is, her affect, the context of what she's talking about, the lack of things she was saying. So let's hear what it's about and then listen to some clips from it.
When it was done. So Wendy took this writing class back in 2016, and because of this writing class, that it was turned into some podcasts, 2 episodes in particular, in which Wendy is talking about the murder of Dan Markell. She's also talking about how she's doing, how her children are thriving. Why don't we go ahead and play a little clip of that?
Okay, so there's the context of it. Before I even start giving an opinion or anything like that, let's listen to a clip and then we'll stop and talk about it.
10 months ago, someone killed the father of my children. First we got divorced, then he got murdered.
Y'all, the way she went, first we got divorced, then he got murdered. I was like, you know what it's giving? Like when I have my first inclination when I heard this, I was like, she's trying to make a profitable podcast off this. I don't know the backstory to the writing thing, but no one can convince me that if this hadn't popped off, like say it popped off and it went viral, we'd still be hearing about it, right? Listen to the way she talks about it, especially what we know now. And I'm just like, I can't believe she put this on paper publicly, let alone turn it into a podcast, like with a hook and everything. First we got divorced, then he got murdered. I'm just like, oh my gosh. It's like she wants to be Stephanie Sue or something, right?
In casual conversations, I don't know whether to call him my ex-late spouse or my late ex-spouse. Except that late ex-spouse sounds like latex spouse.
That's the second. That's not, the only way I edited this is because I cut the clip to talk. Okay, that's the next words out of her mouth after the first one.
Except it sounds like latex spouse. Ugh. Golly jeepers.
She sounds like I don't give a F. Okay, number one. Number two, it is just like this, like she's trying to podcast the crime that, in my opinion, she's not been found guilty, she's not been charged, that she was part of, in my opinion, right? Whether it's simply just from knowing it, and now she's trying to serve this right here. When we get to the part of Surviving the Survivor, they talk about it where it's like, okay, well, Dan was clearly more interested in the kids and time with them, and Wendy was more about money. To me, that's what this seems like. This seems like this, and immediately also in that clip right there, notice how after she says, first we got divorced, then he got murdered. And woe is me, I don't know what to say in social situations. It's awkward for me. The next words weren't, and the children were devastated. And we've put our lives back together. Now, I understand she was divorced, and like, I'm not gonna hold that, like, pretend the murder didn't happen. People are gonna feel a certain way when they get divorced, okay? So I'll say that. But there's 10,000 other appropriate things that could have been said after that, than immediately going in and turning it around to like a difficulty, even if it's just she's trying to crack a joke.
Last July, someone, and we still don't know who, shot my ex-husband point blank in the back of the head as he pulled into our garage after driving our then 3- and 4-year-old sons to preschool.
We still don't know who. Can't roll my damn eyes hard enough at that, please. We don't know who, but I'm gonna drive by the crime scene to make sure it happened. We don't know who, but I'm gonna get a TV repair. Yeah, here's my thing. This is what I'm talking about right here. Knowing what, at minimum, that she just simply knew what was going on some level. Can you imagine being brazen enough to write a thing and then turn a little podcast thing into it? Even if it was just for schoolwork. You wouldn't have caught me, honey, I don't care 10 years later. If you saw me out in public, I'm talking, I'd be a little black veil on talking about what would life be like if he was still here. Honey, I'd be selling it, okay? But that's the difference between the Adlesons. They're also entitled in their own way. Again, I'll say it 100 times, 100 million times over. Arrested Development, the Bluths, It Is This Family, period. They had to have made that show after this family, okay? Had to have. They're each so concerned with themselves and their own little narrative because like you, again, you couldn't have given me good money to do this because I know that there's like a guilty conscience going on in here, even if she had nothing to do with it, which I do believe that Donna and Charlie orchestrated it. And I think that Wendy's part in it was just plain dumb and emotionally manipulating everybody to get the desired result.
We married when I was in my mid-20s, when I thought I could cheat the system and marry a man I lacked passionate love for because, hey, didn't that die anyway during marriage? I saw his intellect and big heart and thought he would make a wonderful father for my children. Our marriage dissolved after the children arrived, as the loneliness of being married to someone that didn't view me as an equal crept in.
I mean, this part's so gut-wrenching because you listen to it and it's like, you know, I saw these good qualities about him and I thought that he would be a good father to kids. It sounds like he was. And he did have these good qualities. The Adelsons lacked these qualities, right? And they sadly found it in somebody else. And again, it just seems like once the kids were there, Donna was like, okay, well, these are my kids now. You can go. You're just the donor. Run along. I've already been tinkering with you. And then many people said this during the trial and like watching in the chat section, the comment section. And I agree with this where, you know, here comes Dan and it's clear that he probably lived a different way than the Adlesons. He practiced religion a different way than the Adlesons, etc., etc. But Dan, and I think that any spouse would do this in a situation, right? And I understand that there's differences, like if it's the wife or the husband or whatever, okay? Like different dynamics, different family dynamics and whatnot. But Dan coming in and seeing the behaviors of the Adlesons, you know, and just like we've heard from Jeff, her ex-boyfriend, and I don't like using the word normal or regular, but we're using those in the context of in comparisons to the Adlesons. So somebody coming in with more regular, normal behavior patterns than the Adlesons and marrying into that, and it's like, why is your mom, what? Why are you doing that? Like, this is, huh? Now, he might have his own stuff with his parents, right? But it's not that, okay? And so what I'm getting at is, you know, he was probably calling that out. And do you think Donna could have that? Do you think Donna could have an outside source coming in and basically being like, your mom's toxic AF, right? Like, what is this about the food at the wedding? What is this about this? No, we're not going to go do that this weekend. And then, you know, we know they did. They tormented him, right? And punished him for it. And Wendy clearly aligned herself with the family before she aligned herself with somebody else, her husband. Okay, now what I want to do is let's get into potential motives, right? Now, there's plenty of them. The relocation, etc., etc. This is clips from Surviving the Survivors interview with Dan Markell's divorce lawyer. He comes on here and describes what was going on during that time. It is eerie. It is creepy. Be sure to check out Surviving the Survivor if you do not know who they are. If you have not seen their channel, link down below. You see on the screen here as well.
And I decided I was not going to take the case. It seemed to me as if the litigants were drafting the papers more so than the lawyers. I don't want to practice that way. Two, the idea of representing a law professor who was accused of contempt and was pointing the finger back in the other direction was not a prospect that was very appealing to me. You know, I quote my fees on how much I'm going to stress over your case. That's literally how I quote fees. And the idea of seeing a law professor possibly get disbarred and almost certainly face the prospect of losing his job as a law professor, given the stress on ethics that law schools have, and we're hammering all of the students. If all of a sudden their law professors are held in contempt or dinged for, you know, submitting fraudulent pleadings, I was like, that's just not something I want to be affiliated with.
Very interesting to hear this perspective. And so again, that's Dan's lawyer talking, or his former lawyer, obviously, and talking about, you know, how he came to take the case and like, oh, this could potentially, you know, do well for me. Working with Dan, here's this attorney, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, but also notice he said, you know, that Wendy and Dan, they're like drafting their own stuff. So you can imagine as another attorney coming on, it's like, well, hold on, there's only a couple of heads at the table of the situation, right? I'm going to take your advice, but like, well, let's reel this in. So I could see where that would be intimidating. So I wanted to put that clip in there so you got the context of how he came into this. And obviously, if you want to watch this whole interview, it's fascinating. I've just picked out clips to talk about. But again, it's on Surviving the Survivors channel. So let's go ahead and get to the next one.
We sat there for quite a few hours and probably spent half the time just talking like humans, not about law. And he convinced me that he was on the right side of history and that he was going to be able to establish that Wendy had indeed concealed assets and committed fraud. And then kind of given, for me, what moved me was his main concern was what he believed was the alienation of his children.
Major takeaways. Wendy hiding assets, whatever he said, committing fraud. This is huge motivation. And wait till we get to the dates of it here in a minute. And then him saying that his biggest thing was the alienation of the children. So Dan, in my opinion, now again, playing both sides of the fence, clearly it's his lawyer, right? So I don't think at this point this dude would get up there and say something that wasn't there. I think he would just not say something. But regardless, this is his lawyer, so there's that. I understand that. I believe this man when he says that Dan's concern was the children and access to his children and visitation and that above money. I believe him. I don't have a reason to mistrust him. And I think that's major. And so look at these two motivations. Now remember at the bottom, the baseline, what is the picture that was being, the canvas, if you will, I kind of spit it out. Donna being Donna, them wanting to get them down to Florida, down to South Florida, near Donna, him not doing that, and the whole bitter drama of that, and Wendy aligning herself with her parents more than Dan, and Dan is the villain.
And when I heard that, and I knew it wasn't about money, that was a big game changer for me too, because going in there just to fight for money with children in the mix and all that. I mean, it's just kind of just unpalatable to me. But if you're fighting because you feel like people on the other side are hurting your children or trying to estrange you from your children, which is what Danny was fighting for. He was fighting for children, not money. And Wendy was the exact opposite. They wanted money, period.
So there you go. He's fighting for children, not money. Wendy, also notice this. And he could have been talking about her lawyer, but I interpret it as her and her family, right? So now you already saw where Donna's trying to bribe him and do all this stuff or whatever. It was all about money. And I think one reason, like with Donna and being like,
we'll give him $1 million. Javi, go get some stapled together money for him. Now go on, Javi.
it's because they would have done that, right? These were very superficial people. Very superficial. Not much beneath the surface, okay? I mean, just listen to Charlie's phone calls. Again, Charlie for me is hey, where the girls at? Yeah, is it ladies' night here tonight, dudes? You already know the vibe, okay? Just ick, okay? And I just think that Donna is the type that's like, well, yeah, everything's for sale. How much do you want for the kids? You know, bring them on, right? You know, just buy them off. You can go have more. I mean, I don't even know how they were going to, and by they, I mean the Adlesons, pretend that he did come down there. What was going to be the next level of drama? I don't think they were going to be happy until he was completely gone.
It was my strategy that we needed to send requests for admissions to Wendy. He had absolute dead bang proof that she had committed fraud in her financial disclosures. And I was like, look, we're going to give her a chance to either come clean. Well, I'm going to ask her to admit you committed fraud. And if she denies it, she'll just be guilty of committing a second act of fraud. And that was kind of my strategy with him.
So 2 acts of fraud. Do we think that Wendy would come clean about it? No, we don't. Well, I understand they're not going to come clean about a murder. Okay, I get that. However, look at what's gone on over the last 10 plus years with these cases. None of the Adelsons take any accountability. So why do we think she would? Of course they're going to hide assets. Of course they're going to do stuff like this. This was a war for them. And when I say them, I'm talking mostly Donna, because I truly think at this point that Donna just pulled the strings and just ran the show of everybody's life, especially her kids, especially Wendy.
But I told him, I said, look, man, if I file this, even if she zigs or zags, it doesn't really matter at that point, because one way or the other, she's going to be on the hook for fraud. And it could have real dire consequences on her ability to practice law and to work and on your children. And if we have to do it, we have to do it. But I really feel like I owe it to your children to at least go try to talk to her lawyer. If we can't figure out some way to resolve this short of full on, conflagration.
So, bam, motivation. You heard him say, if this goes through, this could mess her career up, her job, her everything, right? This is major. This is long-lasting drama and implications above a custody thing. And remember, she's more concerned, the Adlesons are more concerned about money and this and that and blah. So him getting ready to file something, and the dates will become very prevalent and jaw-dropping. Him getting ready to file something that could devastate her career and then probably pivot things for more maybe a beneficial type thing in the custody, I'm not sure. Even more so reason for motivation, in my opinion.
And I said, look, my conscience is clear. I did what I came here to do. If we, can find some old school resolution for this, I feel like we owe it to our clients to try. And if we can't, then so be it. That's the only time in my career as a lawyer that I've ever gone to another lawyer's office and tried to broker a deal. For me, it could be perceived as a sign of weakness, and so it's not something I would normally ever entertain.
So you see how he's given Wendy a chance, and he's coming to the lawyer. Now, he talked about the lawyer, and he went into this thing about how her attorney kind of played this whole like, oh, shucks, what are you doing here now? Come on now. But that he was actually a very smart man and just kind of let people think maybe he was a little bit like country, or I don't know. That's the vibe I got. So you hear him, though. He's given a chance. Look, here's this. I'm going to file this. Here's everything you need to know. Let's hear what he says.
But I felt so strongly about the fact that if this went forward with this litigation, that it was going to be so damaging to Wendy, that I just had no choice but to take the risk of looking weak. And so I turned around and was walking out of his office, and I'd reached down and grabbed his doorknob, and I could still see it in my mind's eye. And he said, "Stephen, I know what you're trying to do." And it was like, for the first time, he wasn't all shucks at me. He said, "Stephen, I know what you're trying to do, and I appreciate it."
So, you know, for a lawyer to say that to another one is very interesting to me, because it's almost this acknowledgement of like, I get what you're doing. You're doing the good, you know, you're trying, I see what you're doing. I get it. I see why. You know, they know. I mean, at the end of the day, people are people, and people have intuition, and people have a spidey sense. You might be representing somebody, but in the back of your mind, you might be like, you know what? It is what it is. You know, I just, it's so sad. And I would like to think that some of the times we see these lawyers that while they might be trying to do a job, like say that we don't agree with who they're representing or whatever, that they know deep down inside, this is right. What Dan's trying to do is right. And what Wendy's trying to do is wrong.
And I turned around, looked back at him, and I said, "Well, Jimmy, you know, if I feel like I owe it to your client to at least give her this chance to see if we can't find common ground." I said, "But if I haven't heard from her or you on July 18th, I'm going to file something. And when I file it, I feel like there's going to be no going back."
You hear that? July 18th. Notice all these dates. Boom, 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 boom. Wendy was too, and it's going to get even worse. There was pressure. There was time sensitivity. He was facilitating the crashing of her world, and the Adlesons had to do something about it.
And he said, "I understand." And I never heard back from them. And that was on June 24th. And July 18th was a Friday. And so I told Danny, you know, that was our deadline, and told Jimmy that was when I was going to file it. I didn't tell him what I was going to file, but I just told him. And Thursday night, my wife and I and our kids, we were traveling to a baseball tournament in South Haven, Mississippi, up by Memphis.
Okay, now you heard him saying there the July 18th, and here we go, and this is what's happening. Now he's describing a trip that him and his wife go on, and basically the moments of like, okay, well, I'm gonna call Dan and and finding out what ultimately happened. You can only imagine.
And so I drafted the request for admissions on Thursday, kind of went over them with Dan Thursday night. And the plan was we were going to talk the next morning to finalize them for filing. And I had told Dan that I was convinced that he was still seeing Wendy intermittently. And I told him, I said, "That's got to stop. If I find out you're hanging around her, I'm going to be out. I'm going to get off this case," because I had genuine concerns that she might accuse him of like hitting her, kicking her, slapping her, leverage her move with the children back down to Miami. And I know the lawyers here know that they've seen those family auctions.
So you see, I mean, this is so sad. So sad. But this is the type of person that Wendy is. I mean, people pick up on this energy, right? We pick up on it, but those of us who haven't even met her, like through the screen, you know, and just the evidence that we've seen, it's absolutely vile to be just frank about it.
I called him, I believe it was at, it would have been 12:18 Tallahassee time, Eastern. So I guess he had probably been shot about, I don't know, 25 minutes prior, and maybe 30. He didn't answer, which I thought was really weird, because Dan would always answer my calls. We talked a lot, and even if he was with the children, he would still answer my call. He would say, "I'm with the boys, I'll call you back," and hang up. So I thought it was weird. And I hadn't heard from him, and it was probably 3:30 or so Tallahassee time, or 2:30, 3. And I was starting to actually get frustrated because I was starting to think that he was getting cold feet about filing.
Now you can only imagine, like, when people recount the moments they found out, fill in the blank, right? And this is so tragic listening to what's going on, because they are right at the finish line. But again, look at the information that he's already said. I was going to do this. It was going to deeply affect Wendy. They, no, they weren't going to do this or that. He's going to file it. We're at this deadline. I do not think it's a coincidence that what happened to Dan happened when it did.
And I'd already told the lawyer it was going to happen. So I was starting to get a little bit frustrated with Dan, thinking that probably Wendy had called him and kind of beguiled him or whatever. or cajoled him or whatever, manipulated him. And my phone rang, and it was a police officer here in town that I've worked with in the past. I know. And it's not unusual for some of my former clients just to call me on random things. And so I answered and I said, hey, you know, what's going on? And she said, how do you know Dan Markell? And I said, what? And she said, how do you know Dan Markell? And I was like, what in the world is happening right now? And then it dawned on me that she was in violent crimes. And so I concluded that Wendy had accused Dan of battery or something like that. And that's where my mind went. So I went into lawyer mode. And I said, he's my client. I'm going to talk to him right now. And she said, you can't. And I said, I can, which isn't necessarily 100% true. But I said, yes, I can. I represent him right now. I have an active case, active representation. I want to talk to my client right now. And that part was true, but it was a different case. So she doesn't necessarily have to, I don't represent him on that one. Anyway, she responded and she said, you can't because something really bad has happened. And I know it sounds crazy, but at that very moment, I knew they had murdered him. I knew they killed him. And I never once had that crossed my mind before. But just something came over me. And so that was kind of my backstory and how this 11-year-plus-year odyssey started for me.
Wow. He will never forget that. Can you imagine? And him saying, I knew right then and there that they had killed him. So here's this. And I'm curious for those that work in the field, et cetera, et cetera. Like this testimony here, when you talk about motive and you talk about this and you talk about that, I mean, I guess to me, I'm just like, oh, this is extreme motive. But then I can think out loud here for a second. But then I guess on that same note, it's like, yeah, but if they can't tie Wendy to anything, as far, you know, as far as like, we have her doing blank the way they do like Donna and Charlie, they don't seem to have any evidence on Wendy talking in code, acknowledging outwardly what's going on in the same way that Donna and Charlie did. You know, Donna and Charlie were so integrated into the whole situation because they facilitated it. And so that's where I question if she'll be able to get charged, because I feel like, you know, do they have actual evidence tying her to it? Now, this right here to me is extreme, but again, it's will it hold up in court? You know, the motive's there, but do they have the actual evidence? Do I hope they do? Yes. I feel like she got away with murder, you know, period, end of story. Again, just an opinion that's alleged. She's not been charged. She's not been convicted. So there's that. So again, thank you to Survivor and the Survivors for letting us use these clips. This is an amazing interview, so much insight. And we'll just see, is Wendy next? So what do you think? Is she next? Let me know. So do you think she's next? Drop in the comments. But also, do you think they have the evidence, yes or no, and why? I'm very curious about this because so many people have different opinions on it. So I'm curious what yours is. So anyways, while you're down there in the comment section dropping that up, if you could please drop some little sofas and maybe some pillows off in there for Rosco, in spirit, Bo and Luke, and you, the Sofa Squad, who makes the sofa possible. It wouldn't be here without you, and I greatly appreciate it. And until we gather downstairs in the comment section to do all that homework, I'll see y'all soon.
I just wanted to say thank you again for watching the whole video, and also thank you for being part of the Sofa Squad. Special thanks to all the Patreon members, channel members from both of my channels, everybody who likes, shares, subscribes, comments in the comment sections. It helps the channel out so much. Now, don't forget, I do have that other channel, the podcast channel. That's where we go live, we hang out, we talk. We have kind of sort of a schedule, but just be sure and check it out. I'll put it up here on the screen. And then, like I said in the beginning of the video, if you want to follow me and Rosco on the Instagram, go on, check it out. It's right here on the screen again. But once again, thank you very much. I really appreciate you being part of the Sofa Squad, and I'll see you in the next video.
Welcome to the Sofa Squad, sipping from the cup that hey, 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 come laugh with the Sofa Squad. Can't roll my damn eyes hard enough.